Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle May Curry, and this is the first of 3 workshops of the Art Exhibition Grant Line. I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see this? Thumbs up? Okay, awesome. I'd also like to introduce my colleague here, Vanessa Ackham. Do you want to say hello?
Good morning, everyone. Good that you are with us. Looking forward to sharing ideas and discussing this program. Welcome.
Vanessa is our public art coordinator on staff, and so has touched every single part of our grant lines. And so she'll be supporting our workshop today and dropping links in the chat as I'm talking.
Thank you, Michelle.
She'll also be monitoring the chat, and so as I'm talking, there will be plenty of points where I'll pause and stop for questions. And since we're a small group today, I imagine we can have lots of time for questions. But feel free to use the chat or raise your hand and we can pause throughout. Okay, so we're gonna be together for about 90 minutes today, give or take some. Again, we're a small group, so it might be a little less. We are going to be going over the grant program as a whole, what its goals are, who's eligible to apply. We'll look at the calendar of eligible exhibition dates. We'll look at some budget considerations, what we consider allowable and unallowable costs for this grant line. I have a bunch of exhibition guidance for this gallery space. We'll look at what the evaluation criteria is for the jury panel who reviews your application, what they'll be using. We'll go over the number of mandatory documents that are needed to apply for this application, for this grant line. A couple tips for preparing and pulling together all these materials. Then we'll do a tutorial, a walkthrough of the grant application portal so that you can see what buttons to click and where to put your important documents, and we'll have lots of time for questions. Sound good? So first, we're going to start with a welcome message from our executive director, Erin Myers. I'm going to press play, and if you can't hear it, Vanessa, just like thumbs down. Okay.
Will do.
No? Okay. One sec. I think I always forget to share my sound. Stop share. Share screen. Share sound. Start this over again.
Hello and welcome. I'm Erin Myers, and I'm the Executive Director for the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities. We're excited to have you here to support you in the applications process related to our fiscal year 2026 grant programs. As a designated state art agency for the District of Columbia, our mission is to support and uplift the artists, the humanities, professionals, and creative organizations, and the work you all do in all 8 wards 52 weeks out of the year. These workshops and live chats are designed to help you navigate the grant process, provide clarity on our requests for applications, or RFAs as you know them, and ensure you have the support you need to submit a competitive application. We're here to answer your questions and share guidance. So your journey, whether it's your first time or returning applicant, is for you to be successful. So thank you for joining us, and once again, welcome.
So Aaron's all over the community. You might have seen him at different community events. If you see him out and about, I'd encourage you to say hello. He's a great advocate for the arts. And this year is no different. So I'm gonna give a brief overview of this grant line and what it seeks to support. So the Art Exhibition Grant Line is a really special program. It's, as we know, there's very few places across the district to put on exhibitions, and even fewer places for independent curators to find venues to put on exhibitions. And so our I Street Gallery space is a place that provides support and development and public presentation of visual art exhibitions by district resident curators. We have a gallery calendar of about 4 shows a year. And this year, 2 of the 4 shows will be funded through our art exhibition grant line. We offer our exhibition space, which is in our Navy Yard location. It's the lobby of the DC Arts Commission's building. It's also a beautiful gallery space if you haven't had a chance to come in. And we also have a virtual gallery space that perfectly matches the specs of our brick and mortar space. So independent curators who are interested in curating in this space must be individuals or organizations, nonprofit arts organizations with prior curatorial experience. And prior curatorial experience here, we do intend for it to be curatorial experience, that you have experience mounting exhibitions, or someone from your team has experience mounting art exhibitions in gallery or museum settings. As I said, this year, 2 exhibition proposals will receive grants during FY26. And there are 2, actually it says 3 themes, but there are 2 categories this year that we're seeking proposals for. There's the Winter 2026 exhibition theme, which every year annually will be a social justice arts themed exhibition. And we define social justice arts extraordinarily broadly. Our I Street Gallery space is a public art space. It's a civic engagement space at the intersection of arts and humanities. We take pride in our ability to bring in diverse groups to have conversations of mass consequence in our space. We also don't see that as something that needs to happen explicitly through the interrogation of specific themes. It can just happen through the interrogation of beautiful artwork. So we define social justice through the groups that we bring in, through the topics that are covered, and I'm happy to talk one-on-one with folks who are interested in applying to this specific exhibition slot. And so that will go into timeline a little bit more, but that'll be right after the New Year's, starting in early January and ending in mid-March. The second open slot is a spring 2026 slot, and it is an open theme. So no, all exhibitions are welcome. We accept art exhibitions as well as educational exhibitions. I had a conversation with a potential applicant a few days ago, and they were asking about like what types of work are you interested in bringing in? We are historically an art gallery, but we've also brought in exhibitions that sit at the intersection of multiple disciplines. So, for example, last summer, we hosted in our gallery a show called A Toast to the Boogie, Art in the Name of Funkadelic. And it was a art exhibition that was celebrating the intersection between funk music and art, funk art and psychedelic art. It was celebrating George Clinton's and Parliament Funkadelic's archive and memorabilia. So this exhibition grant line highly encourages partnering with a co-curator or curatorial mentee. We suggest it for a couple reasons. One, there's a difference in the amount awarded if you bring on a co-curator. If you just as an individual are applying, you are eligible to receive $30,000. But if you bring on a co-curator, you're eligible to receive $35,000. So just making a note of that. Second reason we suggest it is that it is quite an undertaking curating our gallery space. It is $35,000 is a large amount of money. And we recommend having somebody who supports you as a curator in both the curation work, but also the administration work of navigating this funding and grant experience. So as I said, our goals for this grant line are to provide resident curators with space to innovate and create educational art exhibitions for presentation. One of the things that we really emphasize through this program is that we want to engage the public in a multimodal way through our exhibition space. Not only do we want to bring in gallery exhibitions, but we want to bring in programming that engages the public through these exhibitions. So one of the examples that's on another slide is our Winter 2025 exhibition that we just had, which was 50 Years of Hope and Ha-Has, which was in that social justice theme arts category. And that exhibition was commemorating 50 years since the end of the war in Vietnam and was highlighting and celebrating Vietnamese American artists in the region and their experiences and identities. So they had a number of community engagement workshops and panel conversations during the length of their exhibition. They had a zine making panel and fair. They had a artist talk with queer artists on their panel. They had a final closing musical performance with a band from the group. And we thought they did a great job of showing all of the different ways that this exhibition can be activated and bring in different groups into our space. And so, there's not a requirement to have that many events tied to your exhibition, but we do recommend having at least an opening and closing exhibition and having some form of community engagement built into those events. So a few things about eligibility. We'll start with individual applicants, and then we'll talk about nonprofit arts organizations. For an individual to be eligible for this grant line, you have to be an artist, a curator, or an arts-related professional over the age of 18 with prior curatorial experience. This is something that you can detail in the resume that you submit with your application. You should be a legal resident of the District of Columbia for at least a year prior to the application deadline. You have to maintain your residency in the District of Columbia throughout the grant period. So you can't move outside of DC during that year that you are funded by us. That does not mean that you can't travel. That was a question I received recently. You can travel, you can move freely, but you have to maintain your primary residence in DC. You then also have to be in good standing with CAH. So that means that you should have, if you're a previous applicant and grantee, a previous grantee of our organization, any outstanding reports that were required as a part of your grant line should be completed and received by CAH. Courtney, I see a question, your hand raised.
Yeah, since we'll be applying on behalf of Art Enables, our curator does not live in DC, but obviously Art Enables is located in DC. Does that still count?
That counts, yeah. So
Okay.
the next slide, I'll go briefly into eligibility for nonprofit organizations.
I should have waited.
So, all good. Great question. So for nonprofit arts organizations, you have to be an incorporated 501c3 dated at least 1 year prior to the application deadline. You should be a nonprofit arts organization or gallery that's representing artists living in the metropolitan area. Should have a principal business address located in the District of Columbia. So this, Courtney, this should answer your question. The organization should exist within DC, but the people who are working at the organization can live wherever. You should ensure that majority of your business is done in DC, and there's a few things that you can't be as a nonprofit arts organization. Can't be a college or university, foreign government. You can't be DC public schools. And then again, you have to be in good standing with CAH. So I went in briefly into detail about the exhibition timelines in the previous slide, but I'm just putting these here. These are the exact dates that we have available for the 2 exhibition spaces. January 15th to March 6th for the social justice themed exhibition with week-long installation and de-installation periods on either side of that window. And for the open theme exhibition category, April 2nd through May 22nd, 2026. Again, with install and deinstall periods on either side of that window. You'll see that the time frame for the exhibition is roughly 6 weeks. And we find that that's a great stretch of time for community engagement activities, and for people to feel welcomed into the space. The install and deinstall windows are eligible for a little bit of fudging depending on your schedule. You know, you don't need to take the whole week time. There might be a little bit of extra time on either side of that. But those are the windows as we see them right now. And those should say 2026 instead of 2025. Okay, I'm gonna pause here for general questions about anything that I've covered so far. This is a slide that shows our 50 Years of Hope and Haha show that we just had in the gallery this winter. Any questions so far?
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Sure.
In terms of, let's say the installation dates, if artists are bringing artwork to the gallery, is there a space, will they be able to bring it before or after, well, let's say before the installation date, or would they have to bring it on that first installation date? And then the second part of that, is there kind of a storage space or any place where those works would be stored during the installation?
Yes, great question. So we have made available, we have 2 storage spaces at CAH. One we use for our art bank program, that is at capacity at all times. We're moving artwork in and out at all times. We have a second auxiliary storage space that we make available to independent curators to use for a couple weeks leading up to the installation period. We have a couple bins that we can offer, as well as a couple tables that you can place works on. We can also use that space to store any packing materials that you have or that you would like to hold on to in between the install and the install window. Yeah, so
Great, thank you.
Yeah, your artist can deliver in advance of that install period. Yes, Jung Seo.
Yeah, I'm not a nonprofit organization and I'm not a DC resident. I'm only working in DC institution, but I live off DC like 25 miles away. And then I read somewhere that I'm eligible to apply when I leave like a certain miles.
Yeah, so that is unique. That 50-mile radius eligibility requirement is unique to our art bank program and our Murals DC program, which is currently inactive. So unfortunately, with this grant line, you have to be a DC resident, or someone from your curatorial team should be a DC resident. So in your case, if you wanted to apply with a co-curator who would apply for the team, then you could be eligible for this grant.
Okay, so if I collaborating with the co-curator who's in nonprofit or DC resident, if it is a one co-curator like me is not a DC resident but still applicant?
That's
Can
okay.
be
Yeah. So the
okay.
person, the applicant must be a DC resident, the person who
Mhm.
submits the application.
Mhm.
And you can be a part of the curatorial team. You could even be one of the leaders of the curatorial team, but someone from your team must be a DC resident.
Got you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions at this point? Okay. And then move on. Okay. So a few things about the budget. Again, you have $30,000 or $35,000 for this grant line, depending on if you apply with a co-curator. And there's a few allowable costs and unallowable costs, and we'll go into detail about both. To start with allowable costs, you can pay yourself as curator for your labor putting together this exhibition. That curatorial fee cannot exceed 20% of the budget. You can also pay your co-curator or curatorial mentee, and that should also not exceed 20% of the budget. You can also pay the artists who are being exhibited in your exhibition or any personnel involved in mounting the show. That includes people who are a part of the installation of the show or fabrication of the show. Any panelists that participate in any workshops or community conversations that you host. You can pay for equipment, any technological resources or materials or supplies, any services directly related to the install and deinstall of the show. So if you need to fabricate pedestals, we do have some pedestals available for use. But if you needed to fabricate additional materials for the show, any wall vinyl, window vinyl, etc. Wall text labeling. You can use it to pay for the delivery and return of the artwork. So any shipping or transportation costs associated with the exhibition, maybe the renting of a U-Haul truck or the shipment of a UPS box. And then we require that you design and maintain a website related to the exhibition for the duration of the exhibition. So you can pay for anything related to the promotion of this exhibition. So the design and maintenance of a website, any photography of the artworks that's needed, any graphic design related to the show. And then there's a few other types of allowable costs, such as, again, any rentals, printing flyers. We require that you have general liability and property insurance during the duration of the grant term. So you can use your insurance, you can use your grant to pay for insurance. If you need any additional storage to store your artwork beyond what we are able to give you, you can pay for a space rental. Any travel directly related to the exhibition's implementation, and any documentation of the exhibition and supporting programming. So if you wanted to create a video based on the exhibition, if you wanted to create an exhibition catalog related to the exhibition, those are allowable costs. There's a few unallowable costs. We are unfortunately not allowed to help you purchase food or beverage related to the exhibition or any events. You are not allowed to sub-grant or re-grant the funds, like host a competition in which you grant out the funds. You can't pay for tuition or scholarships. Same with any funds provided to universities, any of the restricted organizations, you can't pay them. You cannot use the funds to do fundraising or have any offsite special events. And then any travel or expenses not directly related to the creation of the exhibition. Any questions about budget at this point? I'll pause briefly.
Just one quick question about receptions.
Sure.
If we provide the drink and the food ourselves, is that allowed in the gallery space for an opening or a closing?
Yes. Yes. And we've seen in the past our current exhibition, which is celebrating the art of veterans, that curatorial team, they partnered with an organization called Cook for Vets that donated the food for free for the gallery opening. And then we opened up our community room and had food there.
Okay, thanks.
Can the artists sell their works?
So what I would recommend is having some element of QR code built in to the wall text related to the piece. We can't directly support the sale of work, but indirect support is fine.
In receptions, can you do alcohol, and is it possible to do a cash bar?
We are not allowed to have alcohol in the building, I believe. I can confirm that. But I'm pretty sure we're not allowed to have alcohol at our openings.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Any other budget related questions? I'll say briefly about budget that there is a budget spreadsheet that you will submit, or form that you'll submit with your application. That can be found on our landing page for the art exhibition grant. And you can sort of move all of your eligible costs into buckets related to these allowable costs. So, a couple slides on the gallery itself. I would highly recommend coming in person to view the gallery while you are planning your exhibition design. It's a very unique space. It has 3 levels that have ramps and stairs that connect each part. We have about 180 linear feet within the gallery to play with. And on our landing page for the art exhibition grant line, in the RFA and in the key links section, you'll find a couple addendums where we have put gallery specs as well as blank wall images that you can use for all of your exhibition design needs. One of the optional but highly suggested parts of your application is a rendering of the proposed exhibition. You can use the blank wall images to render your exhibition. Here's an image of the space, and I'll briefly stop sharing and take us to our virtual gallery space, which can walk you through the space. 1 sec. Let's see, stop share. Can you all see this? Here is our virtual gallery space, which you will have accessible to you as the curator to stage the show. We also use it as an accessibility feature during the duration of the exhibition, where you can link to the virtual gallery of the show on the website so that people can come and experience the show. This is our 50 Years of Hope and Ha-Ha's exhibition. It's a little bit dizzying to see it this way, I know. But as you can see, this is our gallery space. which has ramps and staircases that connect 3 levels. It also has a long window wall, which you can use for window graphics. It also has high visibility from the street, which is really great as a curator to be able to draw people in from the street in such a dynamic way. A lot of art can be put in conversation with each other through the way that the room is set up. You can imagine, you can see from the front to the back of the gallery with so much art in between. I'll say we also share the building with Child and Family Services, as well as the Office of Technology for DC. So it's a really high traffic and heavily used building. We often see people enjoying the gallery space throughout the day. Children, families, people who work in the building, people who are coming to receive services. So your work will be on view and open to the public from 9 to 6 p.m., 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., Mondays through Fridays. We often will open the gallery on the weekends for events related to the exhibitions, if that is something that you'd be interested in having, as well as evenings. But we're hoping to be able to be a little bit more responsive to those out of sync times to bring more people in. Okay, going back to my slideshow. So some additional pieces on developing the exhibition. We accept 2- and 3-dimensional works in the space, as you can see, as you saw from the show I just walked you through. There were some hanging elements, and we do have some hanging, some hooks for hanging elements in one corner of the space. It's a very bright space, so projection doesn't do as well, but I could imagine a curator figuring that out by creating some darkness in space. We also have lots of pedestals for use and welcome sculpture into the space. We recognize that as a curator, you're going to be pulling from your network of artists, or if you're an organization, maybe you're pulling from the artists that are supported by your organization. But we do ask that you ask for consent from the artists that you are submitting their work at the time of application. So as part of your application, you should submit proof that you have a happy yes from the artists, maybe in the form of an email correspondence where they are consenting to having their work in this application. We also recognize that, oh, sure, David, go
Do you
ahead.
need to have all of the artworks lined up in the application, or is there space where you can continue to solicit the artworks or make a call for works while you're waiting?
Yes. So you do not need to have all of the artworks ready to go at the time of application, but you should be submitting enough artwork with your application that the jury panel gets a sense of the type of work that you're going to be bringing in. So, for example, our spring exhibition, our summer exhibition coming up June through August is called the Queer Art Salon, and it's curated by 2 curators who have been working with the same cohort of artists for the last several years to curate this annual Queer Art Salon. And so what they did was they submitted works from all of their artists that gave the jury panel a sense of the type of work that would be coming into the space, and noted in their application that the artists would be submitting all new work for this exhibition. We also note that a lot of curators are also artists, and that curation is a part of their art practice. We want to make it possible for the curators to feel comfortable displaying some of their own work in the space. But we ask that you only include up to 2 of your own pieces in the gallery. So this grant line is not a good fit for you if you are submitting your own work as a solo exhibition and you are just submitting one, or you're just submitting one artist's work. We find that we appreciate exhibitions that bring multiple artists' viewpoints and perspectives into the space. And I'm happy to talk more individually, one-on-one, with folks about artwork selection. As I said, there's enough wiggle room in our application requirements that you can submit a partially rendered exhibition or a partially complete exhibition idea, with the knowledge that more works will come in as the grant period goes over. But I also have a few tips here about installation and deinstallation. The curator is responsible for coordinating the installation of the show by a professional art handler or a team of installers. We are able to paint the gallery for you with our standard white, but any additional installation needs beyond the painting of the gallery, it has to be taken care of by the grantee. I've mentioned that we have pedestals available. We also have 2 TV monitors that are wall mountable that we make available to you all. I think I've mentioned this a few times, that we expect the curators to plan and promote and host great programming. Let's see. And yeah, this is a hodgepodge of things. But as a part of your application, you'll be submitting a exhibition timeline, which describes these programs in some form of detail. And then we have chairs and tables available upon request. Any questions at this point?
Yeah, I have a question. You mentioned
Sure.
painting the walls. Is it possible to paint or do sort of a mural of some kind on those big back walls that are not the sort of like hallway walls, but the back ones by the windows?
I'm gonna say a tentative yes to that, and confirm that that's okay. I think we, on either side of every exhibition, paint the gallery. So as long as the walls are not permanently changed in any way, I think a mural is okay.
Okay, thank you.
I'll confirm. I'll confirm.
Okay.
In terms of the artists selected for the exhibition, is there any requirement about DC residency or anything like that?
Great question, and no. We leave it entirely up to the curator to select artists' works that fit with their exhibition theme and design. Artists can be from international, national. We also will happily bring in already rendered exhibitions from other cities. So if you are a DC based curator who's put on a show in New York that you'd like to bring to DC and host in our gallery space, that's something that we would happily support as well.
Great. I do have one other question, which is,
Sure.
in terms of using the space on a weekend or at night, are there any associated costs that we need to cover for those
Great
times?
question. So we ask that you, in your proposal, specify that those you would like, nights and weekends events. And we would then, the CAH team would get those dates approved with building security and the building management. And then we would bear the cost, CAH would bear the cost of paying security to be present for those events. But other than that, there's no associated costs for the curator.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, there are a few evaluation criteria that the jury panel uses to review your applications. The first category, which is worth 30% of your review, is whether the exhibition concept is unique and compelling. We look at whether the selection of the artwork is clear, if the curatorial premise demonstrates a creative and original idea. We look at whether the concept itself is fully developed or has potential and presents compelling ideas, has the potential to stimulate dialogue with visitors in the community. Again, we're a gallery space that really supports civic engagement and conversation. So exhibition concepts that engage the public in thoughtful conversation is something that we prioritize. Then we look at the proposed programming associated with the exhibition and whether the proposed programming is itself thoughtful and creative and innovative. We then look at the merit of the artwork and the content itself. So that's also worth 30% of your evaluation. We look at the artwork, whether it demonstrates artistic excellence and high aesthetic quality. High aesthetic quality here is something I want to flag because it's a very subjective term, and we bring in artwork into our gallery that ranges from, community-based art that's created in community-based workshop settings to fine art by established artists. The full spectrum of that artwork is something that we want to support in our gallery. We look at the curatorial statement in this category and whether the statement makes clear connections between the artwork selected and the themes of the exhibition. And then we look at the optional, though preferred exhibition layout in this category. So if you've submitted a layout, does the layout reflect a good use of the space? Does it take into account the unique architecture of our gallery? Has the rendering activated the space well through the placement of the works? And then, the next category is opportunity and equity, which is also worth 30%. As you'll notice that each of these are weighted evenly. We want to see that the curator has evidence of intentionality in the planning and implementation of the exhibition, and we want that intentionality to reflect a welcoming and inclusive environment. We support exhibitions that offer emerging and underrepresented artists with opportunities. And so we look at the range of artists that you've proposed for this gallery exhibition. We also note here how you propose your relationship with your co-curator or mentee, if you go into detail at all about how that relationship is promoting mentorship or collaboration. And then in terms of bringing in different groups into the space through community engagement, we also note here how intentional the applicant is in thinking about how their program will connect with diverse audiences. Then finally, 10% of the review is related to a review of your budget as you've proposed it, whether or not it's a feasible use of funds, whether or not your breakdown reflects a knowledge of what exhibition design costs, and is it a reasonable and achievable budget? Any questions about this review criteria? Before I get into the favorite part of the proposal, which is all of the mandatory documents. Okay, I'm gonna take a sip of my tea here. So again, there's many different parts of this exhibition proposal. And we'll run through all of the application documents, and then we'll look at all of the checkpoints throughout the grant term where you will be asked to provide more documentation related to your exhibition. So at the time of application, so these are the things that you will be submitting with your application. You will submit a maximum 500 word exhibition proposal that details your exhibition. You will submit a outline, a calendar outline of your exhibition that shows programming and events. As you saw on the former slide, the deinstall and install windows are set. The exhibition window is set, but you need to propose some possible dates. Again, these are fungible, they can move. And you need to propose some dates for the community programming, or any types of events that you host. There are templates for both the social justice and open theme time slots, and you can find those in the key link section of the landing page on our CEH website. You'll also find them linked in the actual RFA on our website. You need to submit resumes or CVs for yourself as curator and any co-curator or mentee. You need to submit written consent from the artists that you are submitting, that they know that their work is being submitted, and you can sort of pull that all into one document and submit it all as your artist consent. You'll submit a budget form, budget template that details how you'll use the budget. You will submit artist statements in aggregate for artists proposed. If you are a nonprofit arts organization and you are seeking work or creating work in group or anonymous settings, providing mission statements for the organizations that you're working with will suffice for this. You'll submit an image list for the proposed work. So this document will just list the names, the titles, the dimensions, the medium of each of the artworks that you've submitted. And then you'll submit the images of the artworks themselves. And you can include sketches or renderings of commissioned work, but that is not required. And I'll note here that these works are subject to change based on the final curation and availability of works. You will have an opportunity 1 month prior to installation to submit a final image list that will be approved by the grant manager, which is me. If you plan to work or create programming with youth under the age of 18, you will need to submit background checks for any programming participants who will be participating in that programming. And then finally, there's an optional, though highly recommended, rendering of the proposed exhibition using the blank photo, images of the wall, or any use of the gallery specs that we have. There's also a few compliance documents that you will submit with your application. These documents are submitted by all CAH applicants. They aren't unique to this grant line. And I'll go into detail about these three. The first is a certificate of clean hands. This certificate is something that you receive from the Office of Tax and Revenue. You can get it at this address here, the My Tax DC website. And it's a certificate that acknowledges that you do not owe any funds to the DC government in the form of taxes or unpaid parking tickets or fines. The logic of needing to submit this certificate is that the DC government does not want to give funds to anybody that owes it money. We recognize that this can be a real barrier to entry for a lot of artists and curators. And so we have support mechanisms in place to help you in navigating this process, but also if you are someone who has many unpaid parking tickets or fines, you can enter into a payment plan with the Office of Tax and Revenue that shows that you are on your way to rectifying those fines, and then you are able to receive a certificate of clean hands in acknowledgement of that. There's also a additional document called the Statement of Certification, which is a document that is unique to CAH, which just specifies that you agree to the terms of our grant making guidelines and procedures. This is a document that you can again find on our website on the AEG landing page, and you just need to sign and date and submit that document with your application. Then finally, you need to submit a W-9 with your application, and there's a 2024 version, not the 2018 version. This document is linked on our website as well. It's just fill out, sign, and date the W-9. For nonprofit arts organizations, there's a couple additional compliance documents listed here: an IRS letter of determination, DC tax certificate of incorporation, and your most recent 990. Any questions about any of these compliance documents or application documents at this point? Okay, so now we're going to go into the documents that will, or the requirements after you have been awarded the application. At the time of award, the curator will need to obtain commercial general liability insurance and property insurance. The limits will need to be $2 million per occurrence. And the property insurance should equal the estimated completed value of the work. If you are not in possession of the artwork at the time of award, which many curators are not going to be, you can obtain the property insurance once you are in possession of the artwork. But once you are awarded, you will have to obtain this insurance prior to beginning work on the grant. So it should be one of the first things that you use your grant funds to purchase. We have a majority of the deliverables related to this grant and this exhibition due at the 30-day prior to the installation mark. I'm the grant manager for this, and so we would be working together to review and finalize all of these materials together. And by working together, I mean you would present them to me, I would review them and approve them with CAH leadership. But it's entirely your curation of the show. So at least 1 month in advance of installation, you're required to submit a finalized exhibition rendering. We'll give you access to our virtual gallery and you can render the show there, and I would go in and approve that rendering. You'll submit an object checklist that we would then use to send to our insurance. that lists the names and titles, the estimated value of the work that you've brought into the gallery. You'll submit artwork labels, any wall text, intro text. You'll submit artist bios for all the artists participating in the show. You'll submit any marketing and promotional materials, including your website, a press release, social media graphics that then we would use as our communications team would use to do all promotion on our channels for the exhibition. So curators are responsible for creating all of the promotional materials, and then CAH is responsible alongside you on all of your platforms for circulating those materials. We also are happy to print postcards related to the exhibition. So if you create a 4x6, 5x7 postcard promoting the show, we are able to print 250 copies of that postcard to give to you for your use. You can happy to print more of those postcards. You'll submit your final programming dates and times at this time. You'll resubmit those letters of consent from artists if any artists have changed in the exhibition rendering, and then background checks again for any additional participants in programming involving youth under the age of 18. After you've completed the exhibition and the exhibition has been deinstalled, you will be responsible for submitting a final report, as well as a budget form that details all of the receipts associated with your grant funds. This is a very crucial part of the grant administration of the grant. It's a very exhaustive review of how you spent your grant funds, and that would be my responsibility to review all of your receipts in an itemized budget form. And there's a few final report questions that are related to how you use the grant funds, what was your experience of this grant, etc. Any questions related to these mandatory documents?
Sure, I'll ask a question.
Sure.
In terms of, let's say, vinyl wall text, are there companies that you typically use that we would have access to in order to get that kind of stuff printed? Or should we, figure we have to do other research to find those companies and so forth?
So I can recommend one vinyl company off the top of my head, actually two vinyl companies off the top of my head. We're not allowed to send business towards companies, but I can say, based on my experience curating, that there's a couple that I could recommend based on your price point, that you might look for other matches, but yeah, there is some support in that.
Okay, great.
Do you have guidance around, like, from past experience, from like costs for those kinds of things, in particular the insurance? Like
Insurance.
what do is there guidance like what other exhibitions cost to insure, or what other expenses like other exhibitions like bear to do things like the vinyl lettering and stuff like that?
Yeah. I don't have off the top of my head the insurance costs. I can give you a list of insurance companies that previous grantees have used, and you can obtain quotes from them as part of your research. And I can look at previous years to see if I have some price points to give you. In terms of vinyl, it's very company by company. It can be a couple thousand, few thousand. For our boogie Toast of the Boogie exhibition last summer, we trying to remember that number because I don't want to misquote it. We had some window graphics that took up a few panels of the windows, and I want to say it was like 4,000 for that. But that doesn't, it was between 3,000 and 4,000, I think. And then vinyl, it's very dependent. You can get very resourceful with wall vinyl. If you know somebody with a fabrication shop, if you are, affiliated with a university that has studios, if you have a buddy who has a studio and a big printer, or you can print yourself at home. That is something that I've seen curators do with wall labels. But yeah, the price can be very low to several thousand as well for vinyl. Any other questions?
Michelle, I have a question related to budget. I know that you said that we could have like a curatorial team. So there's a few questions in this. I assume there's no like maximum number on that as far as how many people we can have involved. And then with that said, can we use a percentage of the budget to pay those people? And if so, is there a cap on that?
Yeah, let me go back. Do.
I know there was a cap on like the curator and the co-curator, but is there any cap on the artistic personnel?
Not on artistic personnel, no.
Okay.
So yeah, so you can beyond the cap on curator fee and co-curator fee, you can use the funds however you would like. The jury does review how you have put together your budget form to say like, okay, it seems like they've spent a ton of money on paying a band to play the opening reception, and they've spent just 10% of their budget on paying the artists who are in the show. That doesn't seem equitable. Like, they can make that type of judgment, but beyond that, it's up to you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, just a couple tips for preparing your application. Just good practice to put all of these documents in one place on your computer with a standard naming practice, like, the name of the exhibition underscore CV, or like, curator CV1, or artwork title underscore artist last name. We recommend that you keep a copy of the evaluation criteria nearby as you're writing your application. You have somebody from perhaps outside your discipline to review your application, considering that our jury panel is composed of experts from across the arts landscape. Prior to the June 30th deadline, I don't think I've mentioned that, the application deadline is June 30th for this grant line. We recommend getting into the portal well in advance of that deadline and poking around, beginning to put your materials inside it. And then there's a technical support tab within the grant application portal that you can use to submit any technical questions that you have, that I'm also available to support. Okay, how are we doing on time? Okay. So I'm going to spend the last remaining bits of our time together to do a live demonstration with our grant application portal. It can be a little tricky to navigate. And so I've included in this slideshow a bunch of images that show you exactly where to click. And I'll make this available to you all after our time together. But I'm going to stop sharing and just hop over to the portal. Okay. So here is the homepage for our grant application portal for all of CAH. If you don't have a login, you can use this green button to sign up, or you can sign in here. I have a login, so I'm going to sign in. Hopefully. Activity problems. Let's see. Let's start over. Sign in. We're in. There's a welcome message from our team. You hit continue. And you'll be taken to your applications page. There's a little sign here that says ready to begin. You don't have any open applications. You can start a new application by clicking this new application button. And you'll be taken to a list of all of CH's currently open programs. So you'll see our art bank program is currently open right now, our art exhibition program, and a number of others. I'm an individual, so I will be clicking on the individual application, but there's also an application for organizations. You can also preview the AEG application as a whole right here, and it will download a Word doc version of the application that you can use to draft your application. Immediately, a number of eligibility questions will pop up. Have you read the guidelines for this grant? Yes, I have. Are you a district resident for at least 1 year? Yes, I am. Do I have a social security number or EIN? Yes. Congrats, you're eligible. You'll hit save and continue. You'll put in some details related to your application. So this is a test. I'm requesting $35,000. There's a number of different types of things that you could put here. We are going to call this project support. This is not necessarily a used button, so don't worry about getting that one right or wrong. The project, it will match, the project begin and end dates will match the grant term. So you'll want to start with October 1, which is when the grant year begins. You may or may not be notified of that, of your award by then, but the grant year starts October 1, 2025 and ends September 30th, 2026. And that just matches the fiscal year term. There's a brief paragraph here that you do not need to worry too much about. Briefly detail the arts and humanities activity goals during the grant period. I would just write a short, maybe a couple sentences on that is a sort of project summary of your proposal. Have you received a grant from CH within the last 5 years? I'm going to say no. Have you applied for a grant from CH in the past years? Maybe yes. Has your address changed? This is something that we use at the time of award to note who we need to give it some additional support to, because our back end does not track address changes, and that can affect how we pay you. So I'm going to say no, it hasn't changed. We'll hit save and continue. It's asking if I'm a first time applicant. No. Save and continue. Okay, so this is where you will upload all of your media and all of your documents. In order to attach photos of the artwork images, you will hit this button here called Attach Media from Library. Can you all see the pop-up window? that just came up? Yes, I think so. You'll think of this as your documents library for the whole grant portal. It is not the once you upload a new media file into your media library, it will not automatically attach to this specific application. It's attaching to your grant portal. So there's 2 steps in uploading photos. You'll see that I have a few photos already in my media library, but for this demonstration, I will upload a new image. Say here, pictures. Here's my headshot. I will submit it. And it's been successfully added. Let's see. Doesn't look like it has. Maybe I will close and open again. Okay, here it is. There I am. In order to attach this file that you've just uploaded to your application, you will hit the blue button here that now will populate into your application. So we can do this with all of the other images that we've uploaded. I'm just clicking the title and they will pop in, as you can see, into the application. So you'll do that with all of the images that you're submitting of works. And I would, if I were you, continually save as you're working. You'll see that when you save, it'll say, oh, you haven't submitted all these files. So we'll continue forward with submitting our files. The application will not allow you to submit unless you have filled in all of these areas with documents. So as you can see, for each of the required areas, there is, or all the required documents, there's a spot. You'll see rendering of the exhibition is one of the required documents. If you choose not to submit a rendering, you can just submit a blank file saying no rendering. So you'll go through and submit documents. Let's see. I'm just going to put in a whole bunch of dummy docs here. We suggest that you submit all PDFs. I'm putting in docs here. If you submit PDFs, it allows the jury to just open up the document on the browser. But if you submit documents, like Word documents, they have to physically download each one of them. So it's a bit of an extra burden on the juror. So I'm going in and adding files here. Open. Okay. So now I have documents in all of these sections. I'll hit save and continue. Now it's saying that my application is not complete. Please finish the application in order to submit. I imagine that it has something to do with all of these things that are not filled out, that it missed. So you'll fill in all of your street addresses, Washington, DC, zip code, my login, phone number, my social security number. Copy and paste. Applicant doing business as is might be your artist name. So my name here has been MMC Test. It's my first name. And I want that consistent, so I'll put MMC test. And hit save and continue. Some time. As you can see, our portal can be a little bit tricky. So hit save and continue. Now everything's uploaded. I'll go to the last page. It says, I'm not seeing any error messages and I'm able to review my whole application here. So I can submit my application. It will take me to an electronic signature page that has you attest to a few things about your application. You'll add your digital signature, hit ready to submit, and then submit. You'll then get a notification via email that you have successfully completed the application. I just received it. And you're good to go. So hold on, I'm gonna go back to my presentation here. Go to our very end. And put, oh man. And put my little last screen up. There we go. Just put it here. And that is the end of our time together. I am available to have one-on-one conversations with anybody who's interested in talking further. This is my phone and email. I'm happy to have office hours and talk through ideas further. Are there any questions before we wrap up about applying or anything we've covered today? I'm going to conclude our time together.
Thank you very much.
Stop recording.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank
Thanks,
you so
Michelle.
much.